people are afraid of being replaced or being impacted. I think there are going to be a lot of startup companies that are going to die down.
If OpenAI disappeared completely, like, we would be fine.
When I first realized AI is going to change the world, this technology can generate revenue, or how this technology can save you money. You're wasting electricity on like stupid computer games.
Once we get to a reliable AI agent, that'll be like the real boom.
And we saw this on the OpenAI dev day. Lawyer, GPT, etc. just kind of got immediately slaughtered by Sam Altman.
Everybody will be able to have teams of 5, 10, 20 AI agents working for them 24 hours a day. This is an interview with Edward Hu, CEO and co-founder of Vext Technologies. In this podcast, we discuss the arrival of AGI and when that might happen, the battle between open and closed AI, and much, much more. So make sure to listen until the end, because you will learn a lot about AI. What are your 2024 AI predictions?
The closed source LLM is still going to be the trend. It's all about controlling, especially this is the case for OpenAI, right? So being closed source gives you more control. I think there are going to be a lot of startup companies that are going to die down.
So companies like OpenAI acquiring smaller startups, or you mean just startups going out of business completely?
I think both. Right now, there are so many different companies that are providing solutions. They're just kind of building their own solution based off a single API or maybe two. But then I think there are a lot of different valuable companies that are going to be acquired. For example, the Llama Index or LangChain. I don't think OpenAI or like Anthropic or Mistral, they're going to do a lot of aggressive move at this thing. Instead, they're going to be more hyper-focused on developing their own models.
Yeah, so it's interesting because if there's going to be like a consolidation of AI startups, it goes like directly against the decentralization of the state-of-the-art models. Because a year ago, we basically only had GPT-4. And now, I mean, I thought about this the other day. If OpenAI disappeared completely, like, we would be fine. There are so many other models that are good. Obviously, GPT-4 is still the best. But we have, Claude 3, Gemini, Inflection 2.5. So many new models are coming up that are competitive with GPT-4. There is like this diversification of power among the top players.
At the end of the day, it's all about profitability. How can we generate and maximize the revenue and maximize the value? Let's rewind 2 to 3 years and going back to the blockchain and the whole NFT hype, right? At its core, the technology is really solid. That the blockchain, there's actually real use case in there, but it's just being overrun by greedy people or greedy corporates trying to capitalize or cash out.
So you mentioned, Mistral being invested into by Microsoft, and we've actually seen this basically with every single AI research lab. We got partnership between Anthropic, Amazon, obviously OpenAI, Microsoft. Now, the interesting thing is that they invest billions of dollars into these research labs, but those research labs spend all of it on compute, back with the same company. So what are your thoughts on this?
I was actually talking about this with my peers a while ago. Okay, what's the real value? People are really kind of just sort of still experimenting, still kind of wondering what are some of the real use cases that AI or LLM or even like, that visual audio kind of AI can do, right? It's kind of still wondering. The amount of computing power that you're generating doesn't necessarily translate into like real actual business value. A silly analogy is just like you're wasting electricity on like stupid computer games, or I mean, no offense, I play computer games, right? That kind of thing, right? You're wasting a lot of computing energies on technology that is still kind of trying to prove its value. When I talk about value, it's all about two things for businesses. One is how this technology can generate revenue, or how this technology can save you money. Even OpenAI themselves can really claim that, okay, I really helped XYZ businesses save up to 20, 30, or maybe 40% of the cost.
Yeah, and if they also claim that, they saved 20, 30% for some business, that would immediately cause backlash because that's probably saved on employees. So
yeah, that's another thing, because just today I was talking to a potential customer in Singapore. And they were asking me to try not to kind of position yourself to, quote unquote, a replacement of this, workforce or, this team. But in reality, it kind of is, right? So it's a really awkward situation.
It is what it is. Like, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Some people just are refusing to accept it, but those are acknowledge it and are preparing are going to be, the best prepared. So I think now it's pretty clear that AI is going to change the world, but when did you first realize it?
5, 6 years ago when I first saw this YouTube channel called Crew. I think they're pretty
Yeah.
famous on the internet. They make a lot of different short films. They experimented with a lot of different deepfake technology. As I remember, they swapped face of this Tom Cruise impersonator with actual Tom Cruise face, which really blew my mind away because it's just like, okay, I was like, oh crap, you can actually do this. And ever since, I was just I was really closely following this whole trend up until last year. OpenAI released ChatGPT, and I was just like, holy crap, this is like, we're starting to see things are accelerating.
I think a lot of people had the same. I mean, personally, I first saw like a demo of GPT-3 in 2020 on YouTube, and I didn't really think much of it because, I don't think it was like kind of well presented, and maybe there wasn't enough hype to really showcase the potential of the technology. Yeah. But then after ChatGPT was released, obviously it showcased like, this is real, this is happening. But still, it's weird because so many people kind of understand this. They know about AI, they know it's going to change everything, but they're like kind of choosing to ignore it. Like, why do you think is that?
I think there are a lot of different factors coming into play. People are afraid of being replaced or being impacted. It's almost like back in time when everyone's riding a horse, and then now all of a sudden you see this car on the street. Yeah. And they feel like, oh, this is interesting, but I don't want to be part of it because the XYZ, because a lot of different excuses, right? I think we're kind of in the middle of that. Usually the majority of the population, they're a late adopter. There are only like single-digit % of the whole total population are early adopter, which I believe is, we're definitely one of them. But meanwhile, it's going to be tough because we are going to get a lot of pushback. So we're going to have to see, and we're already seeing it, a lot of, politicians starting to introduce regulations trying to, prevent this from widespreading or impacting the people that they represent because of this fear.
Yeah, I've recently saw that India actually introduced some new regulations that every company or startup that wants to deploy a new LLM, a new AI system, has to report back to some ministry and get their approval, which, will obviously slow them down a lot. I mean, there is this, obviously a question. A lot of people have vested interest pushing for regulation, especially the people at the cutting edge. Like, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think like we need to regulate open source AI? We need to, add some guardrails because bad actors could use it? Or do you think open source is actually the way? And, as other people like Mark Zuckerberg, Jan LeCun point out, it's actually safer because more people can examine it. Like, where do you stand?
That is a really, really good question and a tough one too. Personally, I feel it's a little bit too early to introduce regulations because I don't at this stage, we don't know what we don't know. I think regulations tend to slow down the technological development. If we're looking at the history, most of the technologies that are being, suppressed or, controlled by regulations tend to kind of develop, slower or even stop, and kind of prove that, okay, LLM or AI or any kind of generative AI technology might be harmful, then we can start introducing regulations. I think a perfect example is that, we're seeing a lot of deepfake videos. I think that is like the most obvious case, right? Then when we're kind of into this territory, I think we will definitely need to start introducing some level of regulations to really prevent it going out of hand.
Maybe actually more technology is the solution, because you could have like a personal, AGI system that could spot, like analyze every video and look for patterns if it's deepfake or not. So maybe actually technology is the more solution. I don't know. But yeah, like personally, I think I agree with you that we shouldn't regulate it too early, because previous technologies like nuclear power were overregulated, obviously due to catastrophes like Chernobyl. But then, we have basically like superficial bans on nuclear plants, which if they weren't in place, all Europe would probably have like next to free energy. Instead, it's like super expensive purely because of everybody being scared of nuclear.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty good example, because I think nuclear technology is sort of like a victim of crowd fears winning over scientific evidence and research.
Yeah.
Like, as much as we can claim that the nuclear technology is safe, when comparing to coal, which kills millions and billions of people, a year, but But then people just have this fear over it. It's almost like, people fearing, and they're scared of, taking planes as much as we claim
Exactly.
plane traveling is the safest form of travel in the world, right? Like we might see this kind of situation going on for AI because when I'm scrolling through Twitter or X and Reddit, there are definitely a lot of people talking about how they have this fear for AI, but then when in reality, it's just like right now, we don't really have a quote unquote true AI, but still this fear starts spreading because they don't understand it.
Yeah.
And even though they understand it, when the fear is out there, it spreads, it's too late. So it's just it's really difficult. I totally agree.
Yeah, it's fascinating how many people, call themselves environmentalists yet push against nuclear when it's one of the safest energies out there. It's amazing.
David, David, I have a question.
Yeah, go.
When it comes to like generative AI, what do you feel is going to be the most useful? For example, like text generative AI or audio generative AI or video generative AI. Which do you think is going to be the most impactful and the most valuable in your personal
So for
opinion?
like companies or for the average person?
I would say let's start with the average person.
I mean, speaking for myself, I can't wait for obviously we already have some AI agents, but like a really solid ones that have, enough agency, enough planning, enough memory that can automate just the most basic
Mm-hmm.
and repetitive tasks reliably. That way you don't have to like actually worry like, did it mess up? Like, did it email the wrong person? Just like, basically to the point of
Right.
like a really reliable, trustworthy person. I think that would be like an unlock, huge unlock. But then again, the average person, we like for that we would need some sort of basic UI, the same way ChatGPT revolutionized, LLMs by giving everybody a chat
Right.
interface. We need something like that for
Yeah.
building AI agents that can completely non-technical people use. But like I don't know for this in the short term. I mean, this could be short term. Depends really on this year, I guess.
Mm,
But for the average person, I
yeah.
mean, the best use cases are probably from text-based LLMs. I mean, images are amazing, obviously. Midjourney is amazing, and all the other image generators are
Yeah.
great. Sora is also super great, but then again, like, what are the use cases? Like, if you have a business, yeah, you can create a logo, you can create a banner, design a website. If you're making content, obviously, you don't have to pay expensive stock footage videos, you can generate them yourself. But like the average person, what do they need? I'm trying to uh, figure that out right now. But yeah, probably something with the LLMs, just getting quick answers, maybe helping them schedule their day, like automate the basic tasks,
Hmm.
helping them make better decisions and stuff like that. I mean, to be honest, I really don't know like what the average person needs. But yeah, speaking
Yeah.
for myself, like a reliable AI agent that's easy to build and deploy, I think that will be a massive revolution because
Hmm.
that can save everybody 1 to 3 hours a day. And then obviously in the real life, if we have humanoid robots that can do chores and stuff like that, combine these two, I think that will be like really the launch of the singularity where you just the progress exponential.
I agree. And the reason also why I'm asking is because um, I'm pretty sure you're exposed to a lot of different AI tools, right?
Hmm.
And for just as an example, I don't know if you know about Zapier,
Yeah.
but Zapier, for people that doesn't know, is basically like very nice tool. It's almost 2B, but you can also use it for your daily life to build your own automation toolkit, right? So it has this functionality where you can kind of chat with AI and ask it to create like a automation workflow for you based on your description. And it's interesting, as much as I'm into AI and I'm a big advocate, when I'm using this tool, I never use that feature to create an automation flow for me because deep inside of me, I have this feeling that, oh, I don't really trust or
Yeah.
this tool that creates a whole automation for me, and I have this trust issue going on, and I'm just really wondering and kind of really exploring where to what point I can start really trusting this technology. To what point does it have to be AGI? I don't think so, but to what point or what kind of situation or scenario will make me feel like, oh, I am comfortable typing in my description, and I fully trust, and I don't have to double check it. I fully trust you create this whole automation for me, this flow for me, and it'll work perfectly. But now I don't have that feeling. I'm just wondering what is needed for that to happen, right?
Yeah, probably my best guess would be the next generation of LLMs combined with maybe cheaper API costs, combined with a really user-friendly interface that's also advanced enough that the top users, the power users can customize it, but the average person can use it no problem. And yeah, something like, I think combination of these three. I mean, we might see it later this year, but I think once we get there, like it will be a true renaissance, because like everybody, even people with no money, like will be able to have teams of 5, 10, 20 AI agents working for them 24 hours a day. And I think that would be insane. Like there are so many small tasks. Like the other day, I wanted to automate brightness changes on my monitor. I have 2 different monitors, and I do it through the on-screen display. It's a nightmare. Like you basically can't do it with code. You have to find like specific softwares, or even through like the command line. It's very difficult. If I had an agent where I say, when I wake up, make the monitor brightness 100%, at 6 p.m., tone it down to 20%, and just like, simple prompt or spoken, doesn't matter whether it's spoken or written, that would save me so much mental bandwidth. Yeah, it's like, I think once we get there, I don't know how far it is. I mean, it could be farther than we think, but like that would be insanely useful, because I have so many of these like small automations, and maybe one of the most valuable for me would be just creating a priority list for every day. An AI agent that knows my goals, short term and long term, knows all the tasks on my list, and can create a priority list to good enough of a degree where I trust it completely and I don't have to rearrange it. That would save me at least 30 minutes a day, right? And there are so many of these like smaller, I think it's like the concept of like death by 1,000 cuts. People want this one big thing that will save them 8 hours a day, but it's more like 5 minutes there, 3 minutes there, 10 minutes there, and those minutes add up to the point of where like most people just do shallow work all day long and don't get anything meaningful accomplished. I think once we get to a reliable AI agent, that'll be like the real boom, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I've been talking to countless AI startup founders and also VCs. Right now, it seems like most of the startup companies that are playing in the AI field are mostly total solutions or applications. Meaning, for example, in the 2B terminology, it's like, for example, creating a CRM powered by AI, or HR software powered by AI, etc. That kind of stuff, right? We're seeing a huge amount of AI companies in this field. However, on the other side, on the end user side, when I'm talking to, like, for example, marketers, or like, HR person, HR specialist, managers, etc., you name it, they kept saying that, our CIO or CTO or our managers keep stuffing all these cool AI tech, increasing our loading. It's not really giving us any. It doesn't really make our life easier. It's just increasing our toolkit. We don't know when to use it. It's just really cool. We can't claim that we are AI powered, but at the end of the day, it's still really us going into the software, kind of doing the manual operation stuff, right? And and also for these kind of applications, it's really difficult for all of these big enterprises to make the switch. So, for example, if companies are using Salesforce, or they're using Zendesk or some of the bigger software, it's really hard for them to switch because they're fully or deeply integrated with these kind of solutions. And there's really nothing stopping these companies, these applications, these software providers to implement their own AI. So we're just wondering, like, oh, nice, we do have a lot of different startups focusing on AI applications, but then how far can they go, and what's the actual value underneath it versus all of these established players? So, also kind of going back to what you said earlier, it's just that I think the purpose of AI and the nature of AI is just really help you to, or you make your life easier, basically. It's just really make your life easier to eliminate the operational costs, and all the time needed to do mundane tasks. And also, this is kind of why I kind of started this company, Vext is to kind of really give you the ability to kind of simply create not agent yet, but a pipeline where you can kind of automate a lot of stuff using AI. Now, our ultimate goal is to really see if there's any possibilities to kind of really integrate, sort of like, if you want to say, become sort of like an adapter of all of their daily stacks between, for example, Telegram they're using, or Slack, or Microsoft Teams, versus like, a lot of different stuff that they're already using. I think that's the end goal, right? Because we're not adding more stacks, we're adding more tools to another person, as opposed to we're kind of, integrating or streamlining everything for them. But then I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts and we'll see what you think about it, because I think it's a little bit of a mess in this field, in the startup field right now. And there's still, definitely like OpenAI providing the core tech, which is really cool, but it requires, the know-how and the technological, expertise to put things together. But on the other hand, we have this total application, total solution, but then it's ready to be killed by all the bigger players out there.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good insight, because, I mean, as you said, people are kind of tired of more and more tools and, adding to their stacks. But on the other hand, every other company tries to do that.
Yeah.
I've heard it from people in my community, like, when Claude 3 was released, it was like, oh my God, another subscription like Claude Pro. They're already paying for, ChatGPT
Yes.
Plus. They're already paying for Gemini Advanced, Perplexity. It's like, how crazy does it get? So I think your idea of actually streamlining it and making it simpler for people and companies, that's actually a really good idea, I think. But I want to touch on the insight you said. Like, why do you think that is, that a lot of people don't like actually get the value out of the tools, yet every founder and every startup sees themselves as this complete solution that's going to change everything for a specific niche? Like, where is that gap?
Yeah, I think for still, I can only speak for this, is because our stuff and my expertise is are mostly in the to-B field. But I think first thing first, it's just that I think I would say probably 70-80% of the people working in the to-B, that were working in a company, all they really want to do is just really get things done. And they just wanted to get things over with. They just wanted to get their job finished, check the list, check the checkbox. So, if they already have a pretty standard process, and this is especially true for big enterprises, if they already have a process, an established process, they don't want to be bothered. They don't want to add more stuff that can add more, changes to their daily workflow. They just wanted to kind of go through the same process over and over, and make things easier, right? But now all of a sudden you have different tools. You have Salesforce, and then you have this cool tool called Sales GPT, or whatever you want to call it. And then all of a sudden you have to think about, okay, damn, how should I use it along with Salesforce? Now I have two tools at the same time, but then I'm still, at the end of the day, a medium between these two tools. So now, who is the AI? Am I the AI, or these two are kind of like, well, who's the tool, right? So I think it's just really, adding complication to your daily workflow is just sort of like the main resistance force of this whole transformation. But I also think another biggest force of pushing this whole thing back is just that, like I said, the switching cost is too huge for these companies. They're spending 10Ks, or if not hundreds of different $1,000 on a software subscription every year. So I don't think they want us to switch over to that. But however, I do think on the personal level, like end consumer in the 2C world, I think there's definitely more opportunities, because people like you and me, where like just daily average consumer, if we can really introduce interesting tools and fascinating tools that can really help them, like you said, set up an agent to kind of do like set up my home environment for me without me having to do additional settings every single day. That'd be awesome, right? So I think consumer level applications might see more opportunities in this field, hopefully within the next year or two.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so talking to like the small business owner or like a company, medium-sized entrepreneur, why should they start taking AI seriously? Because a lot of them kind of know that they should, but they don't have they don't know what specific benefits they could get from building an LLM pipeline with tools like Vext.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think it's just, again, going back to our conversations earlier, is that I think most businesses are still, like large or small businesses out there, are still sort of figuring out what they can do with LLM. And even to a certain extent, what the hell is an LLM, right?
Yeah.
Now, I think right now, in terms of use case, because of just the huge success of ChatGPT, I think most of the businesses out there, they're still thinking of, okay, LLM, I can only use it as like just a simple, chatbot that can kind of a better version of chatbot, basically.
Yeah, customer service.
But I think absolutely. Now, I do think, and I'm specifically bullish on AI automation. What does that mean? Meaning, we can use LLM for like classifier. We can use LLM to kind of automate a lot of different smaller things. We're not using it as an interface to interface with the customer, as opposed to using those LLM as like sort of like part of the code to replace part of the code to act like a operational, logic operator, in a sense, like, trying to make your life easier when building a feature or building an app. So going back to your question and to your point is that it's really about how LLM can really, simplify your workflow and how it can reduce your operational cost. And if you really want to achieve that, if you really want to, kind of be at the forefront of this whole, AI transformation, I think it's definitely critical to really get started. I mean, granted, you might not have a real use case, or you have a pretty shallow use case at this point, but really getting to know the technology and kind of really start brainstorming and kind of really start kind of experimenting with different stuff using LLM. For example, using LLM generate JSON format data, or using LLM to just simply, categorize transactions. I think those are a great start. Those can really benefit your businesses and kind of really, take you far away, down the road.
Yeah, so looking at the entire process and seeing like small parts where they can deploy LLMs to speed up things, make it faster, make it easier, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to another founder that works in fintech, and they are hiring an LLM engineer specifically focusing on building and training LLMs to do transaction classification. Just that, and with just this whole trend and this basically. Hiring a dedicated person to do this job, this is going to be a huge deal. So I definitely feel there's a huge future in this field, and I definitely encourage every single person. Maybe you're not a coder, but find a way to try to experiment with this technology and how you can kind of really infuse this thing along with your business.
Yeah. So talking about Vext, how many employees do you have right now, and what are the roles? Are they all like engineers, programmers, or is it more varied?
Yeah, so we have around 6 people, and they're all engineers. I'm a sort of a little bit of a hybrid, so because I do code, but I'm mostly focusing on business side of the things. But yeah, I think we're mostly engineers, and none of us had any experience in LLMs or AI before. We only got started along with this trend, and I don't think anyone can really claim that they're an expert here. So it's really hard to kind of just hire like a dedicated LLM expert. But yeah, most of us are engineers. We're a pretty small team.
Yeah, there was like the memes of like people looking for 5 years of experience with ChatGPT, or like 10 years of LLM experience.
Yeah.
And
you're hired.
Yeah. And speaking of LLMs, do you have a personal favorite LLM, and which of the next generation LLMs are you looking forward to the most?
I don't really have a personal favorite, but I do feel so far I feel the most capable and versus performance. And performance meaning a mix of, the speed and accuracy right now is definitely I would say Mistral. Because it gives you a fair amount of speed and also a pretty good response if prompted correctly. Then you usually get a pretty good result. You can even reduce it down to like having to perform a simplest task, or if you want to upscale it, using RAG to build your own LM pipeline with your own data and using Mistral models to kind of summarize those information. Those are also pretty useful based on our experience. I wanted to say though, initially when I heard your question, I wanted to say OpenAI, but then right now there's definitely a mixed result when using, for example, like 3.5 along with the RAG logic, because the we feel that 3.5 though is pretty capable. Sometimes it gives you this really wonky answer as opposed to when we're experimenting with Visual, we get pretty consistent results. GPT-4 is definitely one of the best, but I really hate it when building applications on top of it because it's just too slow. So that's definitely out of the list.
You mentioned Mistral actually. Have you thought about using the Groq API? Because they have the super fast chips and they're like generating for like 500 tokens per second. I think that would actually be really useful for pipelines if you integrated that as one of the LLMs of choice. And they have Mistral and Llama, I think, right now. I mean, that would be like that's the fastest way to run inference at the moment. Have you thought about that?
Yes. So we are experimenting with different sorts of LLMs. So funny you ask, we are kind of just experimenting with different LLMs at this moment. So right now on Vext, we provide managed version of GPT 3.5 and GPT-4 all through Azure. Also, we provide Gemini Pro, and we offer Anthropic Instant and Anthropic 2.1. And recently, Anthropic just announced 3, so we are going to integrate that and providing it to our users as well. But we're constantly trying to find different ways to bring new models to the platform to our users so that they can play and experiment and build on top of these really cool models. There are good and bad models, but I think for each models, they are all specialized. They have their own expertise and good in their own ways. So our mission is to really bring those, in front of our users and let them decide and experiment with all of these models. So yeah, we're definitely going to check this out and experiment with those.
So in general, like, what are your thoughts on the Groq chip if you look into that?
So I don't really, I haven't really looked deep enough to really form an opinion yet, but I definitely feel so when it comes to LLM and like what you mentioned earlier, the speed and how many tokens you can generate per minute, I think that is definitely the key when it comes to future LLM applications and development, because not every application is going to like ChatGPT or Anthropic, it generates token by token. It gives users the users might wait, right?
Yeah,
but in most applications, you kind of have to wait until it's finished, and then it comes out. It gives you that full total output. So I think speed is definitely a key. And as far as I know, based on my limited knowledge on that, is that it gives you like superb performance, and I think that's definitely going to be a game changer.
You also mentioned GPT 3.5 being good enough for most use cases, but don't you think that the Claude 3 Haiku, the lowest model, which is, actually cheaper than GPT 3.5 and better on all benchmarks, don't you think it's gonna replace it? I mean, obviously there is some like friction because people have to change APIs, but that's pretty small friction if you're gonna get a better model for cheaper.
Possibly. We haven't really tested with Haiku yet, we are just starting to get access to those to those resources. So we will test that out. Based on the benchmark, it definitely beats 3.5. And I don't think 3.5 is considered pretty old in the AI world already. So I think it has its own time. So I think it's about time for other different models to kind of take its place. And Haiku might be the next one, or maybe we might see some, like maybe from Cohere, maybe they will have a newer models. We haven't heard from them for a while, right? Maybe Anthropic will have, like, for example, Instant 2 or Instant 1.5 or something. We're really betting big on those lighter weight models that can beat 3.5 because we feel it's due for competition.
Yeah, I agree. So actually, I want to talk about Vext a bit more. Did you raise any capital, or is it completely bootstrapped or self-funded?
Yeah, so my co-founder, Ryan, he's a Singaporean, used to work with him in another company called Mlytics, which is a cloud solution company. It's spelled as Mlytics. So it's a multi-cloud / security company, which itself is a really successful company. Now, last year, when we saw this whole AI trend kind of boomed, and a lot of our customers actually have this kind of requirements, so we kind of spin this out and we kind of created this new company to kind of focus on really just LLM pipeline building tool for our customers. It was initially just me and Ryan. We co-founded this company, and Ryan himself, he injected his personal capital into this company. We haven't raised yet, but we are looking to raise maybe around the second quarter of this year.
So that was actually my next question, if you're planning on raising in the future. So if you could have one person, anybody, invest into your company and be an advisor to Vext, who would that be?
Oh man. I don't know if you heard of this person, but Andrew Ang is definitely
of course, a legend
on top of my list. Yeah, legend, absolute legend. I think he's going to bring a lot to the table. I mean, it's definitely a dream, right? But then it'll be hugely beneficial for us to not just in terms of branding, of course, but also the actual technological expertise that he can bring to the table can definitely bring a huge help us lead through the competition right now, hopefully.
Yeah, he's probably the greatest AI educator of all time, I would say.
Absolutely.
Okay, on AI agents, what do you think are the few last missing pieces? I mean, we talked about it a bit, but what do you see any obvious things that would get us to the agent revolution?
I would say so dialing back a little bit, when everyone's talking about auto GPT, and when I first saw it and kind of experimented myself, I thought, damn, this is actually revolutionary, because you can actually have fire this up, give it a goal, and a bunch of little robots and little AIs doing stuff for you. But then I think at the end of the day, I didn't really use it. It's just, for me, it's kind of like a cool tech, but I didn't really kind of put it into real applications, because it's going back to what I mentioned earlier. It's just trust issue.
Yeah.
I don't really trust it yet of the results it's given me. I mean, it has some validity to it, but then I found myself constantly doubting the result. And still I have to spend more time to kind of go back and validate and verify the information, the accuracy, and the result of it. I'm just basically talking about, for example, I'm giving a goal of, okay, please do a market research for AI for me, right? It'll go crawl through the web, it'll kind of gather information, generate a report for you, things like that. But then again, I have to go back and verify all of the information. I think probably performing tasks is going to be a little bit simpler. But then I haven't seen any, or maybe maybe there is one, but I haven't seen yet. Just that an auto GPT version of performing stuff. I think the closest one I think on top of my mind right now is Arc browser. I don't know if you heard of
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
but
it's
then
big.
this awesome browser, by the way. They have this really interesting feature that allows it to kind of, find relevant website and immediately open up the tabs for you. All you have to do is just look through it and close it. I think that's probably the closest. It's nothing related to information, nothing related to you know content. It's all about the actual task that it performs for you on behalf of you and show it to you directly. And all you have to do is just say yes or no. I think that's probably the closest that we have to like real useful automated agent right now.
And in terms of the trust, do you think it's lack of intelligence or maybe like missing some like reasoning capability or some planning or memory? Like, because personally, I think the models are currently intelligent enough to do a lot of the automation, but I don't know, like, what do you think? What is the missing piece to really like unlock that trust? Because that's the billion-dollar
Honestly,
question, right?
I think that's $1 billion question. And honestly, my personal opinion is that the missing piece isn't the technology. The missing piece is us, is the trust. As much as I'm in the AI field, I'm doing, my startup is highly AI related. But then when it comes to critical information, I still have trust issue. I always constantly find myself, like for example, I generate like a partnership agreement through Chat GPT.
Yeah.
I always kind of really go back there and kind of cross-reference like a template on it, and it's that extra work. I think it's a stress issue. But again, there's definitely the tech is definitely there. It's definitely intelligent enough. It's definitely capable enough to reason, especially like a higher end model like Mr. Large and GPT-4. It's absolutely awesome in terms of like reasoning, providing its rationale when providing the information. But then it's just us, right? Human beings are being just arrogant. We don't trust this machinery or this technology that we created. I think over time we might overcome this, but I think it's just it needs some time, and there's definitely going to be a gradual shift in that aspect.
Yeah, it's getting used to the change, but then again, humans are excellent at adapting, so that's like one of our superpowers. So here's a fun question.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you have a timeline for AGI? Because everybody likes to say 7 months, year, 2 years. Some people think it's 30 years. Like Andrew Ng thinks it's decades away. Jan LeCun as well. There is such a wide range of predictions. Like, what do you think?
Um, I would definitely want to be the person to kind of have this predicted correctly, because I've been constantly telling my peers that our competition, our biggest competitor is actually AGI. So, but then my prediction, I would say pretty close to Andrew, because this whole AGI thing is absolutely complicated, and we don't even know probably we've achieved AGI or not. Only when we reflect back into the history, then we will figure out, oh shit, we did actually achieve AGI during which time of the year, right? But then in terms of technology, it's really hard to say. My prediction says maybe in a decade, but when we look back, when we look at ChatGPT, or when we look at the video generation versus the Sora, the Will Smith
Yeah,
eating spaghetti
yeah.
video versus the current. Yeah, that is absolutely insane, and that just happened within a year. And so it's really difficult to kind of really predict that accurately. But my personal feeling is probably a decade or so, but maybe we already achieved it. I don't know.
And do you think LLMs are enough to lead us to AGI, or do we need some novel technology architecture?
That is a really good question. My gut says that I think LLMs is going to be the bedrock of AGI. And imagine sort of like a single LLM is sort of like a neuron system in your brain, like a part of it. And it requires probably billions or even trillions of different LLMs combine together to become sort of like an AGI or even more, right? So I guess it's going to be the bedrock, but it's not going to be one single element itself. It's going to be AGI. It's going to be a combination of multiple millions, if not trillions, billions.
I mean, yeah, some people have this theory that there will be, AGIs everywhere. Some people think it's going to be one like big boss, like some, god-like AGI. So we'll see. It's probably going to be either or because, yeah, it's one
But
of the.
do you think OpenAI they already have AGI though
I
internally?
mean, a lot of people think that. Like seriously, if you go on Twitter, there are some crazy theories. Like, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I don't know. I think they definitely have something big, right? Because if you think about GPT-4, GPT-4 was finished in July of 2022. That is like 18 months ago. So they definitely have something better,
Yeah.
and probably it's a lot better. Whether it's AGI, I mean, that also depends on the definition, of course. I don't know. The scary part is that the thought that it's even possible that they might have something close to AGI is kind of scary because then it's in the hands of a few people, right? I mean, that is the main argument for open source is that it shouldn't be controlled by Sam Altman, Ilya Sutskever, Bill Gates, who's, from Microsoft. I mean, it shouldn't be anyone. Elon, doesn't matter who it is. It should be like, if it's impacting every single person, it should be decentralized and open. At least that's my belief. So, I don't know. I think there's definitely a chance they have something close to it, but then again, like as you said, AGI is unbelievably complex. I mean, I was just watching the Lex Friedman Jan LeCun podcast today, and he was talking about like,
great one.
Yeah, he was talking about like, a 5-year-old or like a 10-year-old kid can clean the table, empty the dishwasher, and we don't have robots that can do that. Like there's this Moravec paradox where AI is amazing, or computers are amazing at doing high level calculation math, like integrals, whatever it is, but then are completely incompetent at doing like driving or anything like that, right? But you can put any 15-year-old kid behind the wheel and in 20 hours you can teach him to drive perfectly, right? Or like good enough, not perfectly, but
yeah.
So like, yeah, I mean, AGI really depends on definition, because by some definitions we already have AGI, as you said. Like if you went back 10 years ago and gave them ChatGPT, they would think like, wow, they have achieved it. So yeah, it's hard, right? But I think the predictions, the reason why they kind of don't matter is because everybody can adjust the definition to make them correct. So like everybody can make their own AGI prediction correct, and yeah, I think that's why they don't really matter.
Yeah. And also, what's interesting about AGI is just that, like you said, there's definitely different levels of, AGI achievement. For example, we can set the bar like really low and just say, okay, if AI can perform a certain task, then we can call it AGI. But then, I think I really like this story. I heard it, I forgot where I heard it from, but when you're reaching for, like, if you have something on the shelf and you're trying to reach it but you can't reach it, naturally you'll find something for like for example a chair or something that can help you kind of step up and kind of grab that stuff, right? That is, and for human that is just something really natural, because we have this ability of imagining, like we can be creative, come up with solutions. But when it comes to AI or robots, the real question is, could they be able to kind of reach that kind of creativity? Because if they can, I would say that's kind of like the classic benchmark of AGI, because they reach the ability to imagine, to come up with creative solution. Because if you train an AI to do the same task, they will naturally look for ladders, things that can have direct correlation of tools or stuff that can help me go higher, like ladders, where things that can just something a little bit more direct. But for us, we look for chairs, we look for anything that can help us go there. So I think there's definitely a gap, and definitely different levels of different in terms of definition of AGI. But I feel for me personally, I really think when an AI has the ability to think, imagine, come with a creative solution, or even a scarier version is that when they have self-conscious, then
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like for me the classic AGI definition.
Yeah, I think when it when we reach a point where AI can do something creative, something new that's not inside of the training data, that will be like really the aha moment, I think, when like everybody will wake up. Because right now, even though a lot of the
I agree.
things seem creative, it's like if you consider the entire internet, like there's so much in the training data, right? So even though something might seem like, wow, this is really creative, maybe it's just taking some Reddit post from 5 years ago that you obviously haven't ever
Yeah.
seen, but that's by some super smart guy who wrote it, and it's just kind of rephrasing it. So we don't really know when it's so much training data. And yeah, I
Mm.
mean, this is a really tough question, obviously. Whether we need a new architecture
Yeah.
or not. But I mean, back to the OpenAI, whether they have
I agree.
AGI, I would say no, because I think I respect people like Jan LeCun, Andrew Ng, and so many others. And even Sam Altman and Demis Hassabis think it's like more of 2030, and that's still 6 years away. So I think all of the hype is just
Mm.
an unclear, too easy definitions of AGI. And I mean, yeah, sure, Claude 3 is impressive, GPT-4 is impressive, but they still lack understanding of the real
Mhm.
physical world. And even if you put GPT-4 into a robot, it can't do anything, right? It's like completely unaware of
Yeah.
objects, of physics, and yeah, the reality.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Totally.
So inside of Vext, do you do any behind the scenes prompt engineering on the LLMs, like inside of the pipeline? Because I know Perplexity does that to make their product better.
Yeah. And I think this is a critical part because you definitely need some level of foundation to kind of help engineers or developers to kind of have a good kick, a good kickstart of their of the AI prompting. Because I think as a developer, we are very good at computer language, like coding and all of those stuff. And it's kind of weird to say that we're not, for developers, we're not really good at, guiding AIs or computers to, or LLMs to generate the response that we want. And we often have to do a lot of different trial and errors. So we definitely have, like most of the products are like Pi, like Perplexity and all that stuff. We definitely have a foundation level of system prompt in place to kind of help developers to really, have like a bit like a basic version of things that they can choose kind of, kickstart with. But right now we're kind of, hiding those stuff behind the scene, but then we're thinking about to kind of open it up for developers so that they can change those settings. They can change their system prompt for people that have in-depth knowledge like yourself. They can change the system prompt so that they can kind of really change the route and change even the behavior and the personality of an LLM, from the system prompt.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Maybe something like where it's, like the example where it's filled in, like when you're filling out the form and you see like a sample name, okay, I should put in my name. So maybe something like that where you can,
Yeah.
see it
Yeah.
in like half the opacity, but then you can change it. Yeah, that would be a good idea. So you founded
Absolutely.
Vext
Absolutely.
in June of 2023, right? So you're still in the first year of
Yes.
growing a startup. So I want to ask, like, what's the first year of a new startup like?
Um, Startup, not even just talking about just the AI startup, but startup in general. I think it's just really tough because running a startup is it's all about really wearing multiple different hats under extreme pressure. And not to say that when we talk about AI startup, you also have additional pressure of trying to stay ahead of in terms of technological advancement, and also trying to kind of really keep yourself updated with all the current market trends. All the big players. You don't, and there's a risk of maybe you go to sleep today, tomorrow morning you wake up, and then all of a sudden OpenAI they release a new feature, and then your setup is just gone. There's definitely a lot of different pressure, and it's very stressful on top of the already stressful startup journey. So I would say it's definitely an interesting one. But then if you're the kind of person that really likes to kind of put your hands in the technical field, the product field, the sales go-to-market field. I think it's a I would say very fruitful experience.
Yeah, it develops you as a person. Like obviously any business, but with startup is like even more pressure. I've heard this quote. It was some old quote actually, maybe from like Jim Rohn, but it was like advice to people: just become a millionaire, not because of the money, but because of who you will become in the process. So I think that's the same idea here. Okay,
I totally agree.
Going back to the broad AI picture, what do you see as the biggest AI risk?
I think the biggest AI risk right now is just people really messing with the whole the AGI sensation. So, for example, I don't know if you guys remember, I can't remember the details, but I remember just an engineer from Google, and they keep claiming that we achieved AGI and this person, it's a real person, that kind of stuff. I feel the biggest risk right now is just like people kind of really start, mixing up, factual situation and fantasy all mixed together, making the wrong decisions. I think that's probably a risk that I can think of. But another one that which we also covered, which is the deepfake part, which is a lot of deepfakes, news, different fake videos on the internet. I think those are probably some of the biggest risks as well. In general, I feel like it's just fake information, wrong information leading to wrong decisions. I think these are some of the biggest risks right now we have in AI. And we covered some of those parts already earlier in our conversation.
Do you think like deepfakes could be solved with blockchain, basically like having private keys and public keys and then signing with your private key?
That could be an interesting use case. I would say yes, because of the nature of blockchain. But though I'm not super familiar with blockchain, but by the definition of blockchain and the technology itself, I definitely feel there's definitely a use case to it. But it's just it's really hard to enforce it at this time, because I feel generating content is just way faster than adding encryption or protocols to certain content. So it's always a it's always a police and criminals kind of story. Like police always chasing criminals all over the place, but criminals always one step ahead. There's that kind of situation. But I would definitely say there's a potential.
I think actually the next like 12 to 18 months will be difficult to adapt, but then I think society will switch its mindset and thinking like assuming everything is fake until proven otherwise. Because right now we see a video and if it looks real, we think it's real. But I think we will actually switch our mindset to seeing something and like completely disregarding it. Oh yeah, that's definitely fake, until we see it. Okay, this is from the official verified, Twitter account or LinkedIn account, whatever. And then we believe it. I think, again, it will take at least like probably 12 to 18 months for the fast adapting people, probably longer for elderly and stuff like that. But I think we will adapt and assume like everything is fake until, it's proven otherwise. So, I mean, personally, I'm not that much worried about deep fakes. I don't know. I think we'll solve it somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely feel that is the case as well. But the reality is that majority of the population right now isn't really as objective as we think. And a lot of times when they look, like for example, majority of the population, when they go on Facebook, when they saw some news or a video, like especially like short videos on TikTok or like Instagram Reels or Facebook short videos, right? When they saw it, they don't really give it a second thought. Like they saw it, they thought, oh, this is trustable, I believe it. And then all of a sudden, it just becomes a part of their knowledge. And I think this is not going away anytime soon, especially in the age of, this whole AI trend. It's going to take a lot of time for people to really, like you said, adopt to it and to start really understanding it. But I think it's going to be difficult because a lot of people are lazy and they don't really have the ability to do fact checking, which can cause a lot of chaos in the process.
Yeah, maybe it's then up to the platforms like Twitter or Facebook or whatever to implement these tools to automatically say like a flag, on Twitter there's obviously the, what's it called? Community notes, but something like that, like this post isn't verified or something like that. And then like an exclamation mark. And then, once like 10 different people, maybe with some blockchain, maybe not, verify it and like, okay, this is actual real recording footage from this journalist or whatever, and like this post is verified, this post is real. I think a feature like that could be implemented quickly into all the major social media platforms. I mean, obviously there will still be a rise of deepfakes, I don't want to deny that, but I think solutions, I mean, this is like where more technology could help, just having solutions to fight the bad actors with good AGI or just normal AI.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I'm just wondering whether how would these platforms do these do this to kind of validate or verify these kind of content? Because like for example, Twitter, they have a team of trust and safety team. I don't know if they still have it, because I remember Elon Musk actually just got rid of the whole team, but before, when Jack Dorsey was still the CEO of Twitter, they have a team to kind of validate every single content, every single news, to kind of add community note to, or add note to fact checking note to the post. I'm wondering though, would that be able to achieve by AI? And it's funny, as much as it sounds funny, because it's almost like using AI to validate AI content. I don't know if that's doable. If possible, then I think that's going to be it's going to be transformative.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably some decentralized solution like the community notes, because the people who do the community notes actually don't work for Twitter. I mean, I'm one of the people that gets suggested, rank this or every now and then. So I think something like that, where like if you have 10 people in a row or like in a short amount of time reporting a post for being AI generated, then it gets a huge like warning like, hey, this might be fake, until it's confirmed that it's real. So I think solutions like that are possible. So shifting gears a bit,
yeah.
Do you have any founders that you look up to?
I definitely really like Jack Dorsey, although he's kind of not really into the AI. He's not really relevant in the AI discussion, but with all the products and all the technologies and all the achievements that he achieved, I think he's definitely one of the role models that I look up to the most at this time when it comes to founders and creators or inventors. I definitely feel Jack Dorsey is on top of my list.
Yeah, not many people have portfolio of building Twitter and then Square, like multi-billion-dollar companies back to back.
Really insane. Initially, I wanted to say Elon Musk, but definitely there's some sort of a controversy surrounding him. So I had my second thought. So Jack Dorsey kind of climbed the ladder.
I mean, both are great choices, obviously. So overall,
yeah.
Like if we talk about AI as a whole, as a field, as a concept, do you think it's overhyped or underhyped?
I think it depends on where you're coming from. So if you're talking about just average Joe, for the majority of the population, I think it's currently kind of underhyped because, for example, I can't even to begin to talk about how many of my connections or peers, they don't really care about AI at this stage, as much as we feel that this is sort of like a bubble. This is sort of like this whole thing is surging, but still you have no idea. Like it's really interesting how many people majority of the population still don't really care about this technology. But when we talk about people like us, or we're talking about business for technology sectors, I feel it's definitely overhyped because there are so many overpromised, commitment or overpromised, things that are put out there that give us really hopeful future and hopeful vision of how AI will become. But then when we really look into it, we feel, how the hell are we going to do that? How the hell do we have the resources for computing power to achieve that kind of stuff? So I think it's just really two different worlds right now. And I think eventually for the tech sector, this bubble is eventually going to burst, but not like how blockchain bursted. It's more like, it's coming back to the reality. It's going to wind down a little bit. People are start going to think about, okay, LLM, image generation or video generation, how it's going to benefit my businesses. Because at the end of the day, if I invest, I'm expecting something coming back, right? It's all about ROI, how it's going to benefit my ROI as a business owner. It's really all about that. But right now, let me give you an insight. When engaging with customers and most of the bigger enterprise or businesses right now, it's almost like, for me, I call it a reverse selling process, meaning a lot of businesses that really wanted to get to get into this hype, to get it they want to really kind of relate themselves with AI, right? But I don't know how. So they come to me and say, hey, Ed, we wanted to use AI in our platform, but we don't know how. Can we think about, like an interesting use case together, and we can kind of do that together. So for me, it's just like, I'm kind of helping them to brainstorm their use case and reverse selling it to them. It's almost like this. But then I don't think this is going to last very long, because eventually a reality is going to kick in, and they're going to eventually start thinking about, okay, I'm spending $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 per month. What does that mean to my business? And they're going to really start, reviewing all of the stuff and the research that they have implemented into this hype, and then think, is this worth it or not? Can we justify the ROI or not? And then it's going to adjust and going to correct itself.
Yeah, I definitely agree that like the parts of the industry are so overhyped. Like yesterday, I literally fell prey to this with the release of Inflection 2.5. Like they say like it's neck to GPT-4, and then they said it's the world's smartest personal assistant. So I was like super excited, right? Started recording right away, and then like halfway through the video, when I got to the actual benchmarks, I see that it's not actually better than GPT-4 at any of the benchmarks. I mean, in some of them it was like basically the same, but in some, like coding and math, it was quite a bit worse. So like, the even Inflection AI, which is a $4 billion company, is still like falling into this hype, clickbait type of marketing. And like overall, I think if we got rid of this like short-term like AGI, in 2 months, like 5 months, doesn't matter. Like this, AGI is here and stuff like that, like shock the industry, all of that. If we got rid of this like short-term hype, I think it would be really healthy, because as you said, like there's this imbalance of like the general public is definitely undervaluing AI, but then us, we live in this kind of a bubble where we see like on Twitter, everybody's kind of who gets it. We think we probably do overvalue it and like see everything as like, oh yeah, in few months, like some people genuinely think that, AGI in 7 months, okay, whatever. But they also think that when AGI is here, it will like instantly delete all jobs. They think like, basically millions, like billions of jobs will disappear the moment AGI is created. They're like completely unaware of like the real friction and regulation and like how companies and need to adapt and stuff like that. Like it's kind of crazy. And some people even think like ASI, artificial super intelligence, will be created just days away after AGI is created. Like if you look at Ray Kurzweil, right? He had AGI at 2029 and ASI at 2045. So 16-year gap, right? Between AGI and ASI. And he's been one of the most, like accurate and respected AI futurists of all time. So like it's crazy because there's such a wide range. Like some people genuinely think we're like 30, 40 years away from AGI, and some people think OpenAI already has AGI internally, and the moment it gets released, ASI will be created. And like I did a poll on my YouTube channel, and it was literally like 20% of, like roughly 20% of people thought that it will be days at most, like hours, if not days, between AGI and ASI. And I think that's absolutely insane. So I don't know, there is like so much of this short-term hype and short-term delusion that I think the entire field would be healthier if it would. It's kind of the same in crypto. I think crypto would be a lot healthier if there were no like meme coins and none of that, like, you know, pump and dump. Like it would be a lot more respected field, and people would actually study the underlying technology if it wasn't for all the, you know, hype on top.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be cool though if we do have, you know, a super intelligence within a couple of days? I would definitely wanted to see how it looks like, because um, well, yeah, I totally agree. It's just we have so many different, just such a wide range of prediction right now, and and it's just really hard to, you know, you'd be lying if you know when AGI or super intelligence is gonna be available to the public. But again, I will definitely interested to see what the AGI or the super intelligence will look like within a couple of days. And hopefully it's better than GPT-4. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested as well, of course, but personally, I would like it to be farther away than closer because I don't know. I still feel like I have a disadvantage compared to people like Elon or Larry Page who've been like born 30 years ago and they have like much more time to become successful and to position themselves for such a, you know, pivotal moment. So I still feel like very unprepared for AGI or ASI even. So yeah, I mean, personally, I would want it to be like 10, 15 years from now. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, as you said, nobody can prepare it.
I agree. And you know, personally, because like I mentioned earlier, our true competition to Vext
Yeah.
is AGI. So definitely wanted to kind of, you know, go a little bit, you know, farther, like, you know, 10, 15 years, to give us a little bit time to breathe.
So, okay, it's good that you mentioned that because that's actually my next question. Like, what's the long-term vision for Vext? Is it to, you know, reach $1 billion valuation or to get acquired, or is it just to be like the best way to build AI pipelines and apps? Like, what is the like ambitious? Give me the most ambitious vision.
Yeah. So our most ambitious version of Vext is to kind of become. It's also within our slogan is to become the AI automation, the AI automation tool, similar like, you know, the AI for Zapier. We want to become that, meaning you can remotely build any. For example, you want to build your own, you know, automated agent to perform various different tasks, or as simple as like you did on your video, which by the way, great video, to create your own personal research assistant. You can do that. So we want to provide, first of all, a wide variety of different models for you to choose from, and also on our roadmap, we are planning to enable, you know, developers to bring their own models to the platform, so that for them, it's not just using an existing like large language models. If they want to use like a SLM that they train with their data, they can also do that as well. So it's a combination, like, you know, a platform for them to kind of really piece together their own LLM, or, you know, like a AI automation tool, so that they can do a lot of different things. And ultimately, maybe in the future, we might start looking into, you know, creating our own models. But then our core value is to really just to complete, not compete. So we don't want to get into the LM game or SLM game too early. We definitely want to kind of be the complementary adapter between all of the existing solutions right now, and make it easier for developers to, you know, build AI powered apps using our stuff.
Okay, sounds great. I think this is probably the best way to explain it is like the picks and shovel strategy for AI, right? Because like everybody's trying to build their AI tool, everybody's trying to do that, but Vex is kind of making that easier, you know, just a software that everybody who wants to build their LLM pipeline will use that, will need that, and that's a much higher probability bet than trying to build the next, you know, ChatGPT, the next Perplexity. Like who knows what's going to be needed there.
Yeah, and we also like to say this to kind of call ourselves a better alternative of LangChain. So like LangChain is a great framework, and partially we're also using it. But then the downside of using LangChain is just that, first of all, I think the documentation right now is poorly managed. I think there's a reason for it because it's just how fast the whole
Yeah.
LangChain community is developing. So I think that's pretty natural. But another thing is just that it gives you a pretty bare bone framework to kind of start with. But then when you need something a little bit more complex, for example, like a comprehensive logging or debugging interface for it to kind of really monitor how the LLMs or the AI in general are performing, you don't really have that out of the box with LangChain. So we wanted to kind of help, developers that are looking at something what LangChain can provide, but a little bit further, a little bit more. A better logging, better interface, because LangChain is a backend framework. So we wanted to kind of, level that up, giving developers an easier way to do that. So we wanted to create a better version of LangChain. And that's not necessarily we're competing with LangChain. It's just more, we wanted to provide more options. We wanted to provide a more complete, a higher productized version of LangChain.
Yeah, and I think the value of a great UI can't be understated. I mean, that's basically the success of ChatGPT. They literally had GPT-3 and 3.5, and Sam Altman was like the only person in the company who was pushing for the consumer product, and Greg Brockman, Ilya, all of them, the entire founding team was like, this is a distraction, we shouldn't do it, let's stay focused. And he was like, no, trust me, this great UI will be popular. And, he was right. And that's basically, like, people don't realize ChatGPT existed for 2.5 years before it was released. Like, the technology existed and was available through OpenAI's playground. It's not like it was hidden. It was available from 2020 until, in the November of 2022 when it was released. Like 2.5 years later is when it blew up. So ChatGPT is basically UI. It's crazy, but like the reason why it blew up is easy to use UI, obviously a great language model, but that already existed. So the reason people didn't use it was there wasn't a great UI that they could use. And I think Vext is probably doing the same compared to LangChain. LangChain is still complicated for most people. And with Vext, I mean, anybody can build a pipeline.
Absolutely. And I wanted to kind of spin it on the same topic because I think technology itself is definitely important. Like in this case, we're talking about LLMs or a lot of different AI technologies. But I think oftentimes we really we're not talking about productization enough, because I think product is, a good product really, makes or break a technology. For example, what Apple is creating right now isn't really new, right? It's really, when we look at the core technology, it's just like really just laptop powered by, it's just laptop.
Yeah.
Powered by Linux, and also phones where that has touch interface capability. It's pretty simple, but a good product really just kind of provides a better experience. When you have that established, it gives you a huge leap despite you have the same core technology underneath. So I think it also goes back to our conversation earlier when it comes to entrepreneurship, startup journey. It's just that, granted, technology is absolutely important, but productization and your product strategy, meaning how you gonna build your product, how you're gonna provide or deliver a user experience, is going to be huge. It's going to be super impactful, sometimes even more important than the actual technology underneath of your product.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the ChatGPT is the best example of that.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
absolutely.
Outside of Vext, which AI startups do you think have the most promise?
I would say Perplexity.
Yeah, I agree.
Perplexity on top of ChatGPT right now is the daily driver, that my go-to search engine when I have anything, when I look up for anything. Before, All I did was just open up Google Chrome and I type in keywords, and I have to scroll through all of the content, just making sure none of those are SEO spams or SEO content. But now with Perplexity, it gives you a really good summarization based off just your keyword. And you don't really have to do any, sorting or any validation of each of the search results. And it gives you some of the really good information sources, citation and everything. So I would say Perplexity is just hands down one of the most promising startup companies in the AI field right now.
Yeah, and the CEO, Aravind is like, he's crazy good. I mean, if you follow him on Twitter, it's literally every other day he's like announcing a new partnership, a new project. Like, it seems like he's working like 40 hours a day. Yeah, he's insane.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it, but it's just really, really good. A really good execution, really good strategy, really good product.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Perplexity is definitely positioned to dominate. I mean, I wonder, like, do you think there is a price that he would sell to Google? Because, like, his entire position is to go against Google. Like, they're valued at like 520 million right now. But like, do you think like if Google threw like 5 billion at him, that he would sell?
I would say probably not Google, but Microsoft, because Microsoft really wanted an edge in the search engine game over Google for decades already.
Yeah,
and
true.
I would say Microsoft probably will be the purchaser, if there's a deal going on with Perplexity.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, actually, Satya Nadella predicted this 20 years ago. He said that the only way to beat Google is to have a system that gives you the answer right away instead of 10 blue links. And I mean, Perplexity is the closest we have for that. But I think actually, to give Google some credit, I think Gemini Advanced is pretty good at web search. I mean, I would say it's probably the second best tool we have right now. I mean, obviously ChatGPT is super slow and, only checks like 3 websites, so that's terrible. But Gemini Advanced is pretty fast, and like, I mean, it doesn't give you as good sources, and like, it doesn't check as many websites as Perplexity, but I think it's pretty good, to be fair.
But then it still comes down to how you're gonna, build your product, because Gemini is still like sort of like the LLM engine underneath it, right? And what makes Perplexity great is how they piece together their product. It's not just LLM alone. It's also, like a combination of different things all pieced together. And I think we will find out if Google will be able to kind of turn their what they call it before it was Spark, but now I forgot what is the name again.
Gemini.
Is it? It's just Gemini, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how they're going to kind of turn Gemini into that kind of version? Whether it has the ability to provide more citation, provide more information, provide a better user experience, as opposed to like Bard before it was just this really crappy version of it. It's just like, a very simple version of ChatGPT. Then that's definitely not going to work.
Yeah, I think actually what you said before, that, the big companies can't afford to risk as much and implement as fast. I think that's what happens here, because Perplexity, when there is a new AI model like Mistral Large or Claude 3, like within 24 hours, it's already there in the settings and you can use it. So Google definitely can't, be as fast. And when they go fast, we saw what happened with, the images, like the whole disaster. So yeah, I mean, this is the advantage of startups. They can move faster.
Yeah, the whole image thing, it was just really funny. And, it's funny because, how Google really kind of claimed, and we have this impression of how they are really advanced in this field, but then all of a sudden they're kind of just really falling behind, even behind Perplexity, this losing to this kind of startup. Is just really, really interesting how they got themselves into this position in the first place.
But I think like a lot of people believe, and I think I agree, that they have the tech, like they have so much, in-house behind the scenes. They're just afraid to release it. Like, they had a transformer in 2017. So what did they do from that time? Like, they didn't do anything. All of the people who all of the people behind the original attention is all you need paper left Google and went to found new startups, new companies like Noam Shazir, the founder of Character.ai. It's a $1 billion company right now, and he was at Google, so they lost like super key players just because they didn't release any technology until OpenAI put pressure on them with ChatGPT. Then they created Bard, and like until then they didn't do anything. Like obviously, DeepMind had AlphaFold, but there were no like commercial products from Google, like from the time they invented the Transformer. So I think they have a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and they have the most data out of anybody. So I think if they wanted, they could create the best LLMs like very quickly, because nobody has YouTube data, Gmail data, Google Docs. Like they have Google search, so much data, so much proprietary data that's not available by simple scraping. They could use that to create something way better than GPT-4 or even GPT-5 possibly, but I think they're just scared to release. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe they correct their slowness.
And now that you mentioned, I remember I saw this news. Google, I think they struck the deal with Reddit to use Reddit information to train their LLM. I'm really looking forward to how those responses going to be generating out of Reddit data.
Yeah, I've seen those memes. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are the next few features that you have on your priority list for Vext? Like what can the users of Vext be excited about in the near future?
I think the biggest one right now is going to be, like mentioned earlier, the ability to bring your own LLMs into the platform to manage, even to like do some level of cost control. So right now, users can only come to Vext and to kind of use the use the LLMs that we provide, manage LLMs. But then we're hearing a lot of customers coming to us to say, hey, they want to use their fine-tuned version. They train on SageMaker or the models they deployed through Hugging Face. They want to do that. So we're opening up support very, very soon. And that's going to be one of the biggest release for us within this quarter. But then we are also thinking about to go a little deeper to provide more integrations. So right now, we're providing limited integrations with Zapier only at this time, but we're receiving a huge amount of feedbacks from users asking for Discord integration, asking for Telegram, asking for Facebook Messenger integration. As much as these simple integrations, are pretty common, but then it gives users or developers an easier way to kind of really streamline their development flow without having to write a single line of code. So I think those are also on the pipeline as well.
Sounds good. And actually, I'm curious, what's the programming languages you used to build Vext?
So in the back end, we're using Python, and also for Python, we're using Django for most of our backend system. As for front end, we're using React, and I think it's just a pretty simple version of React. I don't think it's any other framework. Like we're not using Gatsby, we're not using Next.js. It's just a simple React. But combination of these two frameworks, I think it does the job pretty well.
Sounds good. And what advice would you give to somebody who wants to start an AI startup?
Don't do it. No, just kidding. Really getting into the AI startup is just really thinking about, you really have to think about what kind of pain points that you're going to solve. It's not another get rich scheme, just wrap another API and then you can immediately provide values to users or businesses. It's not like that anymore, because it's proven that a single move by Microsoft or OpenAI can easily, crush you on, right off the bat. I think it's really just what kind of value you can provide. Are you solving a real problem, or are you making something that is already that already exists, or almost exists, but there's a very low bar of entry. You just got to really kind of put your thoughts on it, and you really think through what is your unique selling point, what is your moat, and what is unique about your product, and what is unique about your AI startup, as opposed to just another gambit of trying to get rich.
Yeah, I mean, building a startup is definitely the opposite of a get rich quick scheme.
Absolutely no.
So, how are you personally using AI in your day-to-day work? Like, do you have any creative or esoteric use cases?
Oh yeah. So for our team, every single one of us have some level of AI tool subscription. So we have engineers using GitHub, Copilot. And all of us have ChatGPT Pro subscription, and some of us are using. Most of us are using Perplexity. We're using a lot of different AI tools. Personally, though, I use a lot of ChatGPT and also GitHub Copilot, and also Perplexity, of course, and a combination of little tools that we built using our own product, using Vext to streamline all of the workflows. But most of us right now, for me, the uses are trying to eliminate the work of performing mundane work. It's like, for example, trying to accelerate the coding process, right? And also trying to accelerate the content generation, because as the person that you kind of have to deal with a lot of different things, not just coding, but also go to market. I have to think about how to create content, blog articles, draft contracts, come up with partnership programs, etc. All those stuff. So I highly leverage these AI softwares and tools to kind of really create a foundation for me, and then I spin it off on top of it, which saves me a huge amount of time, super productive, and I don't think how I did it without these a couple of years ago.
And is your team fully remote, or do you have like in-person offices?
We do have office, but I'm trying to cultivate a remote working culture, because at the end of the day, I think it's easier for us to find super talented engineers or technical person around the world if we implement a remote working culture. So I think we're heading towards that. But right now we do have a physical office, but I'm not enforcing any back to the office policy.
Yeah, I mean, there is this dilemma. I mean, a lot of people have strong opinions on this. Like, obviously, Elon was famous for forcing everybody to come back into offices, into Twitter. And a lot of people are just going full remote because, as you said, like, you can attract people from all around the world, not just your location. So, yeah, I think probably, like, at a certain scale, probably having a mix of both, where you have like a main office where people can come to if they want to, because some people are genuinely more productive in person. And then, honestly, some people want to work from home. They live in the middle of nowhere. And otherwise, like, that talent would be completely inaccessible, right?
Yeah, and also comes down to what is the qualities of the talent that you hire. If you hire highly motivated talent, then I don't think you have to worry about the productivity and the efficiency. Because I think the biggest argument right now, and I think I remember there's like a research report on for this particular topic saying that it is proven that remote workers are less productive than people working in the office. However, I do feel that based on our current setup, average person. So I feel the Vext team right now, everyone's highly motivated. So I don't think we're experiencing that kind of a productivity issue right now, because quite contrary, I think they feel they provide and they deliver the best when they feel the best. So far, I'm seeing pretty good results.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because like the people who are high achievers, high performers, probably will do more because they can work their own hours. They can prove themselves more. They don't have constraints. But the people who are like minimal wage and like really the 30K a year type of employees, those probably on average work better in person, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So speaking of talent, like every single great CEO stresses the importance of having a world-class team, right? So where do you personally find and hire people?
You mean what is the hardest thing to hire people, right?
Or like where do you find the great
Um,
talent? Like which places?
oh, where do I find great talent?
Yeah.
Oh, um, I think we're kind of like slightly in a disadvantaged position because we're located in East Asia, and when it comes to AI talents, I think you will probably find the best talent pool in the United States, in the Bay Area, in Silicon Valley. However, I do feel there's a booming trend of there are going to there are a lot of new talents coming out in East Asia that are specifically and highly capable in the AI field right now. However, it's still a bit of a mixed result at this time. But I feel right now, because most of my team are actually local in Taiwan, and I do feel that the engineers in Taiwan are highly capable, and they're really passionate in this technology. And so far, we're getting some really good results. But I do feel that eventually we will have to start looking outwards and to see if there's looking at the high kind of viewing it with a higher standard and to see if we can find talents also in the Bay Area in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Taiwan is proven to be a great place. Like TSMC is the provider of chips to Nvidia
Sure.
and a bunch of other companies. So, I mean, yeah, it's a great place to be. Um, I also wanted to
Yeah.
say, I actually lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, so like any specific websites like where you find talent, or is it like through connections, it's like that?
I think right now it's mostly through connections. I think, but now I think especially nowadays because of all the huge tech companies layoffs, you definitely have more options as a company, right? So I feel, no matter through connections, no matter through like standard, hiring platform, websites, whatever, I think you're all going to get great results. But personally, I find it easier and getting better results through connections and through references.
So that's interesting. You actually think that the layoffs are an advantage because like some people might think that competing against Google, OpenAI, all these big companies that are hunting for the best AI people, that's obviously super tough as a startup in the AI space. But you actually think that if you properly utilize the layoffs, it can be an advantage. Is that right?
No, it's more. Okay, so let's talk about AI first. So AI, obviously, I think is the hottest market right now. It's really hard to find good AI talents. However, we're just talking about talents in general, like good quality talents, like good generic software engineers, back end, front end, whatever. I think from a business perspective, it's a great market right now because you can really find top-notch talent that you couldn't find before because for job hunters, people looking for jobs that got laid off, they definitely are less selective versus like for businesses when they're trying to hire, they got more options. So for us, it's definitely a plus when hiring like a software back end, front end engineers. But when it comes to AI, it's definitely still tough because all of the best talents are still flowing into bigger companies like Microsoft, OpenAI, or even like Perplexity. So it's a mix.
Okay. So at Vext, like what are the biggest bottlenecks you're currently facing? And if you could remove just one of them, which would it be?
So right now, I think it would be the resources constraint. Because right now we have limited. I think we're still operating on a relatively conservative budget versus like bigger companies that they've fundraised, so they have bigger capitals to operate. versus right now we're a little bit more conservative. So in terms of market expansion and also in terms of technological development and progression, we're definitely a little bit slower. But I think the answer to this challenge is definitely, to fundraise and to increase our capital, and which is what I'm currently focusing on right now to achieve before the second quarter of this year.
All right. So we're coming up on 2 hours, so I have last two questions. First one is kind of, just I'm curious about this. When you have like a large customer base, large user base, is it even possible to like negotiate custom API prices from the companies that are providing the LLMs, or is it the same for everybody no matter how many tokens they need?
It's definitely possible, and there's really no standardized way for any companies to do this, and also comes down to what is your relationship with the cloud providers that you're working with. So, for example, Azure, usually you can strike a pretty good discount rate with them if you have pretty good usage for if you're using their computing, if you're using their CDNs, you can usually strike a pretty good deal with them. Now, are you able to kind of apply that discount to LLMs, Azure OpenAI or Azure AI Studio? That depends, right, on who you're working with, what kind of which sales you're working with, or which reseller you're working with. So it really depends, but it's definitely possible because we're already working with a couple of vendors that provides favorable LLM usage discounts that kind of supports us to provide LLM resources to our users at a bigger scale. So yes, it's definitely doable, but it depends on who you're working with. I don't think you can get that working directly with OpenAI, but you could definitely get that kind of discount if you're working with, for example, Azure or AWS.
And like roughly, what is the percentage? Like 10%, 20%, 30% cheaper?
I would say a pretty good benchmark is around 8 to 15% is a fair range. And again, it depends on what is your rate, because if you have larger usage, for example, if you have cloud computing on Azure that consumes around like $10,000, $20,000 per month, definitely you're going to get like maybe 20-30% discount, right? Because you're one of the bigger customers. But yeah, it depends on what is your leverage.
Okay, so last question, and this is more of a fun one. What is one unpopular or even controversial AI opinion you have?
That is a good one. I would say that is a really hard one. Okay, I'm just gonna put it out there. So I definitely feel AI is still right now with all the LLMs or all the AI technologies right now. It's still a pretty. I think it still goes back to what we talked about earlier. It's still pretty much a hype. It's still pretty much a hype. There's really very limited use cases, where all of the use cases are still pretty much focusing on the chat application. And I think nothing is going to change unless we see some big players, like, for example, if OpenAI created some sort of like interesting use cases where, some big players that kind of established this, their actually valuable use case on top of it. Or else, I don't think the industry is going to be, or at least there's not going to be a lot of business value at this point for most of the businesses, unless otherwise proven.
All right, so that's it. Thank you for your time, Ed, and I really admire what you're doing with Vext, and thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this podcast, then I would urge you to check out Vext. It's amazing software, honestly, and they have a free plan, so there is no risk. It's going to be the first link in the description, so give it a shot.